So, we live in a world that is just completely saturated by media, right? I mean, how do we even begin to understand the influence it has on us, on our politics, on society itself? It's a huge question, one that scholars are seriously grappling with. And today, we are diving right into the middle of that debate. And just think about it for a second. You've got your social feeds, driven by algorithms that know you better than you know yourself. You've got the 24/7 news cycle. Media isn't just reporting on our world anymore. It really feels like it's actively shaping it. It's influencing what we buy, who we trust, how we see each other. And this whole process is so deep, so profound, that the old ways we used to explain how society works, they just might not cut it anymore. So what is the right theory to make sense of all this? For this explainer, we're actually jumping into a fascinating academic debate, one that was captured in a 2013 article by Professor Lana F. Rakow. She's responding to a pretty bold proposal for a new way of thinking, and their whole conversation really gets to the heart of the matter. Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to lay out the problem of our mediatized world. Then, we'll look at a really interesting proposed solution from the East. After that, we'll dig into three critical questions that challenge that very solution. And finally, we'll see if there's a path forward that isn't about finding just one single right answer. All right, first up, let's really set the stage and define the core problem here. Communication scholars are trying to get a handle on this incredibly powerful phenomenon, something that affects every single one of us, whether we realize it or not. The key term you're going to hear is mediation. Basically, it's this idea that media has become so tangled up in our lives that it fundamentally shapes everything, from how political debates happen to the very social fabric we live in. We're not just talking about media's effects. We're talking about a deep, structural change to society itself. And this is the central challenge. The speed of digital media has scholars worried that the theories we've been using for decades are just, they're inadequate. It kind of feels like trying to fix a brand new, complex machine with a rusty old toolkit. How can you possibly understand the world's inequalities and massive changes when your framework is from a totally different era? So, faced with this challenge, some scholars are saying we need more than just an update. We need a completely new way of thinking. And this is where the scholar Shelton Gunaratne steps in with a really radical proposal to completely change our intellectual toolkit. His call to action is this provocative flip of an old American phrase. Gunaratne argues that the main way of thinking in the social sciences, what he calls Western science, isn't just not good enough, it's actually part of the problem. The solution, he suggests, lies in turning to Eastern philosophies. Now, what's really interesting here is the contrast Gunaratne draws. He critiques Western science for its straight-line, cause-and-effect logic. He says that approach just can't fully grasp the complex web of interconnections that really defines our world. On the other hand, he suggests that Eastern worldviews like Buddhism and Taoism are built from the ground up to understand relationships, the whole and its parts. They offer a much more holistic perspective. Now, it's super important to note, Gunaratne isn't trying to just throw out Western science entirely. His goal is way more ambitious. He wants to create a marriage between the two, to combine their strengths into one single powerful meta-theory that could accurately explain mediatization for absolutely everyone. Everywhere. But is a single grand theory really the answer? This brings us to Lana Raikow's response. Now, she sees the value in what Gunaratne is proposing, but she raises three crucial questions that really challenge the whole project at its very core. So Rakow breaks her critique down into three parts. First, she questions the whole concept of mediatization itself. Second, she digs a lot deeper into the problems with Western science. And third, she questions whether a single universal meta-theory is even something we should want. Okay, so on that first point, Rakow worries that when we talk about the media shaping society, it sounds an awful lot like we're just blaming technology. This idea that tech is some unstoppable force acting on us. She asks, wait a minute, who's making the decisions? Who is producing and marketing these technologies, and why? Are we forgetting about human agency, about power? Next, she argues that the problems with Western science run way deeper than just its logic. Historically, it was used to justify colonialism by labeling other worldviews as primitive. It's a system that often values control and mastery, and it hides its own biases behind this veil of objectivity, totally ignoring the fact that the person doing the research is always part of the world they're studying.
And this is such a powerful illustration of her point about these hidden histories. Rakow points out that the original phrase, "Go west, young man," is just soaked in the ideology of manifest destiny, a doctrine that justified violent expansion, the displacement of indigenous peoples, and was deeply sexist. So the question is, can a phrase with that much baggage really lead us to a more inclusive way of thinking?
And finally, Rakow challenges the ultimate goal itself, the very search for one universal theory, even a fancy one that tries to blend East and West, risks becoming just another totalizing system. I mean, what about the countless other worldviews out there, like those of indigenous peoples, which offer these profound insights into relationships and balance? A single meta-theory might just push them all to the side all over again. So if one single grand theory isn't the answer, where does that leave us? Well, this final section explores a different path forward, one that suggests the goal isn't to find a single right answer at all. And Rakow lands a really powerful punch with this insight. She points out that Gunaratne himself cites the Buddha as teaching that we should seek knowledge from our own experience, and that a diversity of opinion is what leads to understanding. So the very philosophy being held up as the solution seems to argue against the idea of a single, all-encompassing theory. It's a fantastic point. And this leads us to the ultimate takeaway here. Maybe the problem isn't which theory is right, but the very desire to find one theory to rule them all. The goal, Rakow suggests, shouldn't be to just replace one dominant worldview with another one, even if it's a hybrid. Instead, Rakow suggests a more humble and maybe a more productive approach. Rather than searching for a meta-theory, maybe we should be working to create contact zones. These open spaces where different worldviews can actually engage in a real dialogue, where they can challenge each other and create new knowledge together, without any one perspective trying to claim it has all the answers. And that leaves us with a final, really challenging question. If we accept that no single worldview holds the key, that there's no universal instruction manual for understanding our complex, mediatized world, then how do we navigate it? How do we decide which ideas to trust and build upon? Now that is something worth thinking about.